Well, the true mark of someone is if they look good, even when their personal emails come out. So you passed the test that very few of us would pass. Dr. Anthony Fauci, thank you for spending some time with us today talking about all of it. We're always grateful to get some of your time.
Dr. Anthony Fauci receiving the kid glove treatment from MSNBC's Nicole Wallace, because Fauci's just so dreamy. Maybe we could put his face on a pillow. Just hours after thousands of emails obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request demonstrated, in plain black and white, just what a lying hack of a bureaucrat he is. Here for more on the latest about these revelations, the author of Unreported Truths about COVID-19 and Lockdowns, Mr. Alex Berenson, who I'm sure must feel like "I told you so" is a t-shirt that he should be wearing every day all over the place. Alex, good to see you.
Buck, it's great to be on with you.
What are the big takeaways that you have? Because people are coming at the Fauci emails from a lot of different layers and levels, right? People are saying that they've seized the mask part of it. They're talking about the origin story and how it seemed to be suppressed. What was the biggest single thing that jumped out at you about all these Fauci emails?
The biggest single thing has to do with gain of function research and the lab leak. What you might call the origin story, and how Fauci very, very clearly early on was very concerned about the potential that this was an engineered virus, and that potentially it had leaked from the Wuhan lab. And it looks like he went out of his way to sort of steer quietly, but work with other scientists and steer them, steer public opinion and steer scientific consensus and steer, investigative reporters away from any investigation of the lab leak. And he did this cannily, and it's not quite clear yet from what we have exactly what he did. But so, what people on the left have said is, oh, there's no smoking gun here. There's no one email where he says, oh, yeah, I know this leaked and we're going to hide it. That's correct. What there is, as you would expect with a guy who, first of all, this is only a fraction of his communications. He has phone calls we didn't see. He may have texts we didn't see. He may have personal email we didn't see. And even these emails are redacted. We're not getting the full picture of what he knew and didn't know from this. But what we see is that on January 31st of 2020 and February 1st and February 2nd of 2020, so very, very early on in this, Fauci expresses clear concern about where the coronavirus might have come from. And there's a conference call, and we don't know what was said on that conference call, between him and some very senior virologists really around the world and infectious disease specialists. And very shortly thereafter, there's a concerted effort that he is part of. I think you can say from the emails that he's steering, although that might be pushing it a little bit far, but he's certainly part of this effort to discourage anyone from considering the idea that this virus might have escaped from a lab rather than jumped from a bat or another animal. And frankly, the most shocking thing is that the virologist named Christian Anderson, who on January 31st of 2020 writes Fauci and says, me and some other people have looked at this and we're concerned about things we're seeing in the virus's genome. Less than a month and a half later, so really given the publication schedule for papers, really only about 5 or 6 weeks later, has submitted a paper to a very prestigious journal called Nature Medicine, saying this can't possibly have come from a lab. And so something happened in there to get everybody on board. And the other thing I'll say is it's clear, Fauci had reason to believe this was going to be much worse than it was, right? Because the early data coming out of China was very frightening. It was, we now know this is a virus that it's worse than a bad flu season for sure, but it's in the range of what we know from the flu. And in early 2020 in China, it looked like something else entirely. It looked like something that might kill, hundreds of millions of people worldwide, right? If it's going to kill 4 out of 100 people it infects, and everybody on Earth is vulnerable to
that's Spanish influenza level.
And so Fauci had reason to be very concerned about anything that was going to link him, and the research that he had pushed, this so-called gain of function research, to this virus. Even if he didn't fund it, and he did fund a little bit of research that was done at the Wuhan lab, even if it was only a fraction, that was going to be enough to, it was going to look terrible for him. And so he did everything possible to steer people away from that.
And if things had looked terrible for him, Alex, you and I both know it might have been harder to create this cult of Fauciism, which people bought into, where he has all the answers. Don't question Fauci. You have governors of major states literally with Fauci pillows for all their TV news shots. Gretchen Whitmer, I don't know if you've seen this, she has a Fauci pillow behind her whenever she does shots, as if she's got like an icon of Kim Jong-un in North Korea behind her. It's absolutely outrageous. How confident are you now? I know that no one knows, but if you were to give me a kind of confidence level based on the data and the evidence that we actually have, that this did come from a lab, are you 50-50, 80%? Where would you put that?
I put myself in the 80 to 90% range. And, I was pretty early on this. There were a handful of other people. I saw a few scientists, a few journalists pushing this. But the reason that I'm more confident now than I've ever been, and I might even go as high as 90%, is it's been 18 months, okay? And you can assume that the Chinese have done everything possible to find a potential zoonotic link. In other words, an animal, whether it's a bat that somehow could have transmitted this virus, whether it's a pangolin or a civet. And in the 2003 SARS outbreak, they very, very quickly tracked it to a wet market that was selling civets. And civets are they're like little wild cats. And it became clear that the original SARS went bat, cat, civet, or bat, civet, human. And so it didn't take them very long to figure that out. Now, this, of course, is an order of magnitude more serious, or orders of magnitude more serious. And yet the Chinese haven't been able to come up with any plausible animal host. You combine that with the fact that, all these questions that were raised about why the virus looks the way it does and why it has what's called this furin cleavage site, there's never been good answers given for any of those. And it just, over time, when one theory becomes less and less plausible and the other theory becomes more plausible, you have to recognize that. And, I think what happened, one of the things that for the people who are hoping to cover this up, they had the WHO report come out earlier this year. And the problem for them was the report was so obviously a whitewash, it actually backfired. So that report said, we think there's a better chance that this might have been transmitted from some frozen food into China than that it escaped from a lab in China.